Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Empowering the Employment Sector to Better Serve Youth with Mental Health Issues. My name is Greg Lockwood, and I'm Stakeholder Coordinator here at the BC Centre for Employment Excellence. For those of you who are not familiar with the Centre, it was created in 2012 to act as a research and knowledge-sharing organization for BC employment service providers and employers. The Centre's mandate is not only to do innovative research, but also to find ways to share best practices with BC practitioners and employers and better integrate evidence into practice. We created this webinar series as a way to reach out and connect with practitioners. Through the series, we have highlighted new research by the Centre, but are also tapping into the knowledge and expertise within the employment services community. You are invited to view the video recordings of previous webinars that we have posted on our website. Today's webinar will provide a basic overview of mental health, discuss the benefits of employment for those living with mental health issues, review some best practices and tips on how to best support clients living with mental health issues as employment counselors, and explore the new employment resource, Empowering the Employment Sector to Better Serve Youth with Mental Health Issues. We are thrilled to welcome today's guest presenter who is connecting with us all the way from Toronto, Marissa Perry. Marissa is the Special Projects Coordinator for Youth Employment Services, or YES, and led the development of YES's new employment support resource, Empowering the Employment Sector to Better Serve Youth with Mental Health Issues. Marissa has a background in curriculum development and program coordination, and now develops and implements a number of YES projects, which focus on the areas of mentorship, entrepreneurship, and mental health-based initiatives. Marissa has experience with classroom teaching, group facilitation, and one-on-one mentoring, all of which have influenced her methods of program development and implementation. Today's presentation will last about 45 minutes, leaving some time for questions and discussion. You are encouraged to submit your questions and comments to our presenters in the questions feature of your panel. We will address questions during and at the end of the presentation. Remote CART, or live closed captioning, is also available during the Centre's webinars. You can find the link in the reminder email that was sent out this morning, as well as yesterday and last week. And now it is my pleasure and to hand over the microphone. And before I do so, I just want to say that we did experience a little bit of a technology glitch when we were preparing for today. And so Marissa is going to be delivering the presentation blind from Toronto. But I am going to be moving the slides for her, so if there is anything that is off with the slides versus Marissa's presentation, I do apologize, but we are going to do our best to make this work. And this is certainly not Marissa's first webinar, so she's a pro at delivering these, and look forward to having her deliver today's presentation. So Marissa, I know you're there, and I'm going to pass over the microphone to you.
Great. Thank you so much for that introduction. And yes, welcome everybody to today's session entitled Empowering the Employment Sector to Better Serve Youth with Mental Health Issues. I'll begin just to, as Greg already touched upon a lot of it, a little bit about me. So I am the Special Projects Coordinator at Youth Employment Services, and I was the lead developer of YES's newest employment resource, which we're going to speak about today. And as he mentioned, I come from over 5 years of classroom curriculum and program development experience, and have worked very closely, which I'll get to, in partnership with the Centre of Addiction and Mental Health, CAMH in Toronto, to develop this resource. In today's session, I'm going to talk a little bit about YES, so what our organization does, what we believe in, and sort of why we are the employment sector leaders for youth in Toronto. Talk a little bit about the basics of mental health. The Lighthouse Project, which is a unique initiative on supporting youth with mental health issues that YES implemented a few years ago, and which this curriculum is definitely based off of. I'm going to talk about some best practices for working with youth with mental health issues, and I'll talk about how we can support youth with mental health issues in the employment sector as employment counselors, as job developers, or in whatever capacity you work in. So Youth Employment Services. We were founded back about 50 years ago. We're about to celebrate our 50-year anniversary as the baby boomer generation started to enter the labor market, and there weren't enough jobs to take on all of the new grads from school. And this was seen as a huge issue, so they developed the Rotary Club, developed Youth Employment Services, which offered pre-employment services to youth, and we've sort of grown and expanded and now serve youth across the Greater Toronto Area, which I will sometimes call GTA, with various different programs. We have entrepreneurship, mentorship, and pre-employment programs specifically, and I think there's about 19 of them in there, and those serve everything from people who have disabilities. We have the Lighthouse program, which I touched upon, which is for youth with mental health issues. We also have a lot of entrepreneurship programming with exposure, kind of testing out entrepreneurship, and then as well as a 6-month incubator program. And then we have a lot of pre-employment programs, so anything from 2 weeks of job training and so on. So I don't know if Youth Job Connections is something in BC, but that's a large program that we overrun, which supports pre-employment and then provides job placement. Yes believes that employment is empowerment and the cornerstone of safe and healthy communities. Yes leads the Canadian youth sector with innovative programs that empower disadvantaged and vulnerable youth to become self-sufficient, contributing members of society. So that's our slogan, our motto, and definitely what we strive to do to work towards every single day. Youth Employment Services, our goal is to help youth either find and maintain a job, return to school, pursue further training. So if maybe they come here and then they wish to earn a trade or need additional training to enter the job field that they wish. So we try to help them identify what that training may be and enroll them in it, and to launch their own business. So I talked a little bit about our entrepreneurship program. We have an exposure program, which is just drop-in sessions so they can sort of learn about the world of entrepreneurship. It's definitely a growing field and a growing market for youth, especially as they realize that there are so many endless possibilities in the workforce. We have a summer program which allows them to test the waters of entrepreneurship and sort of allows them to launch a summer business. And then we have a 6-month incubator program, which the expectation is that youth who enter that program would be able to leave the program having a self-sustaining business that earns them some money. So mental health.
So,
What is mental
Marcia,
health? Yeah.
sorry to interrupt. I realized that I forgot to launch the poll. We had a poll set up for folks. And if you don't mind, before you get into an overview of mental health, would you mind that I launch the poll for our audience?
Yeah. You're going to launch the poll now?
I'm going to launch it right now, yeah. So,
okay, great.
The question is, how often do you work with youth job seekers with mental health challenges? And hopefully I'm seeing some answers or some responses come up now, so it looks like the poll is working.
Great.
And I'll give folks about a minute to answer this question, and then I'll relay the results over to you, Marcia.
Okay, would you like me to wait or keep going?
Yeah, why don't we wait maybe 30 more seconds.
Okay.
We've got 75% voted, so we're almost there.
Great.
Okay, so let's close the poll there, and I think this is a first in our history of of delivering these polls. We have a 50-50 split between often working with youth with mental health challenges, and 50% say sometimes. And then no folks that respond to the poll have indicated never, or that they do not work with job seekers at all. So 50% often and 50% sometimes. There you go.
Great, and that's actually great to hear, because as we move along in the presentation, if anyone had said they don't, I would have argued that and said we all do. So good to know that we have some often and some frequent, and I hope that through this presentation you learn something and that you gain some hopefully valuable resources and insights into working with these youth specifically. So what is mental health? Mental health is the process through which people strive to find balance in all aspects of life. Mental health affects one's mood, thoughts, perceptions, and behaviors. So mental health, just to note, is something that we obviously all deal with. It's also something that looks different for every single person. What one person's balance in terms of, say, physical health versus mental health versus emotional health, spiritual health, it looks different for everyone in terms of what mental health is, and it's something that every single person is striving for and striving to find balance with in all aspects, and every day in all aspects of life. Good mental health is represented when a person is able to think about and deal with everyday tasks and challenges, such as making choices and decisions, adapting and coping with challenging situations, talking about one's wants and needs, and maintaining meaningful relationships with family, friends, and coworkers. So as you can see, this is something we do every day. Some days, some of these things are more challenging than others. Mental health is not something that's consistent. It's constantly fluctuating. There are days where we struggle to deal with more challenging situations. That might be because our mental health isn't at what would be our state of kind of the ideal mental healthy state. But it's something that we're dealing with every day and something that we're able to do for the most part on a daily basis. We all, with that being said, we all feel sad, worried, scared, anxious, nervous, or suspicious at times, but it's when these feelings start to get in the way of a person's ability to go about their daily life over a long period of time, then they may have issues with their mental health. And when working with CAMH specifically and in doing research, a long period of time is typically, they sort of set the standard of 2 weeks. So we all have bad days. We all have a week even, say, where, you're just down and not wanting to get out of bed or unable to make choices. You're especially indecisive per se, but it's once over a long period of time, so sort of a minimum of 2 weeks, and then it could be longer. It could be a month, it could be 2 months, it could be years. That's when we say that someone may have issues with their mental health. And I will take a moment here to note that with this resource, we have developed it to meet the needs of any youth with mental health issues. So mental illness is when they're medically diagnosed with something such as depression or bipolar, schizophrenia. Mental health issues is just anyone who might experience these feelings for more than a long period of time. So it's definitely for those who are have a mental illness, a diagnosed mental illness, but it's also for youth who just struggle with their mental health on a daily basis. So we kind of cover a wider spectrum of youth with this resource and with this program. So did you know 1 in 5 Canadians will struggle with their mental health at some point in their life? So I'm glad that poll worked out with 50-50, because if you think about 1 in 5 Canadians struggling with their mental health, that means that if you even maybe look around the room you're sitting in today, 1 in 5 of those people experience it. And if you think about your life, you definitely know 5 people, and so one of those by the statistic would struggle with their mental health. So it's definitely something we need to be aware of and be well equipped to deal with. I believe in the States right now there's a huge campaign about 1 in 4, so they actually say the stat is slightly higher. I'm sure in Canada this isn't a perfect stat, but that is the one that the Government of Canada has released. Mental health issues among Canadian youth are on the rise, and it's predicted that this demographic will see a 50% increase in mental health issues by the year 2020. This stat is only from 2016, so if you think about the amount of youth that have it now or have identified that they struggle with their mental health, there's about to be a 50% increase. So again, that's why this is such a relevant issue, something we definitely need to be prepared to address. And did you know that only 30% of people who are experiencing issues with their mental health will seek assistance for it? And there are a lot of reasons why. So the why. Why do only 30% of youth access the support that they need? Sometimes they don't have insights into their own mental health, so they just may not be aware that what they are experiencing is a mental health issue. Some of them don't know who to tell or how to access support. Some of them try to handle symptoms on their own. If you yourself think about when you're having a bad day, I'm sure you have self-coping mechanisms that you just put into place. So whether that's staying in bed or baking or cooking or going for a run or whatever that may be, they just try to handle these symptoms on their own and hope that they eventually go away. Or they may feel ashamed or embarrassed about needing to seek help. This last point I will expand upon a little bit more, as when I did a lot of research with not only CAMH and with resources, but also in interviewing youth. And this is possibly, I would say, the most quoted one, that they feel ashamed or embarrassed about needing to seek help, about needing to talk to a friend, about wanting to talk to a friend, and feeling that they should be able to do some of the things before, such as try to handle symptoms on their own, or just maybe they aren't aware of how much their mental health is affecting their abilities to function in society. So it's mental health stigma. So stigma is often the reason people are not comfortable talking about mental health and why people often hesitate to seek help when needed. It's the negative attitudes and negative responses of stigma that create stigma, and it's something I think we are all a part of. I know when I started this project, there were definitely a lot of misconceptions that I personally had about mental health that I've learned, and there are a lot of misconceptions that exist out in society with a lot of campaigns, such as Bell Let's Talk is a national one, really trying to break that stigma and educate people to talk about mental health, as it is. I think some people don't even realize that mental health is something that we all deal with on a daily basis, or maybe something they don't think about. But it's these negative responses that definitely kind of dissuade people from talking about their mental health wants and needs. If I do this presentation live, now is when I usually insert a clip from a TED Talk by Ruby Wax, R-U-B-Y-W-A-X. She has a fantastic clip. It's about mental health, where she speaks about the stigma of mental health and what a challenge it is in that when you have a physical disability or a physical illness, there's something for people to visually see. But when you talk about a mental illness, people often think it's just an excuse for bad behavior, or just you're trying to pass something off because you don't want to do something because you can't see the way that it's impacting your body. And so just the challenges with that and why it is so hard to move past the stigma and have it become a more accepted conversation. So I highly recommend you all look into that if you have the time. With that being said, let's turn a little bit to the employment sector. So did you know that unemployment rate for people living with mental health issues is over 70%? And I put "and rising" because some research shows it's as high as 90%. And I think what's most shocking about this statistic for me is if you pair youth unemployment rates with the unemployment rate for people living with mental health issues, if you think about how many of those people, how many of those 70% are youth, I think it really just shows how much we need to be aware of this issue and how much we need to support these youth in finding jobs and giving them the unique needs, or giving them the unique supports that they may need to be successful in the workplace. And then, did you know that employment is an extremely important part of any person's mental health journey towards recovery? If you think about everything employment offers, it offers a daily routine, it offers social networks, it offers a purpose, a sense of purpose, it offers self-confidence when you're able to get a task done successfully. And these are all things that if you look at any recovery plan for someone with a mental health issue or with a mental illness, that this is something that is very much needed for them. With this resource, we partnered with the Social Determinants of Health Unit, and employment is definitely one of their top ones. It's part of the reason that we worked with them and that they worked with us. Getting them employed will help a person on a journey towards recovery more than almost any other means, because it's able to give them that sense of purpose that they need. It's able to give them that daily routine and structure. It's able to boost their self-confidence. It's able to boost their independence in terms of providing them with a wage so that they can live independently, and it provides them with social networks, meeting with coworkers, friends, and so on. So things that they might not be receiving otherwise. So I talk about how important employment is, what mental health is, So how can we, the employment sector, help? Well, I briefly mentioned the Lighthouse Project before. It is a unique initiative where in 2015, YES was granted government funding to create and implement an employment program that would specifically address the many unique issues of youth living with mental health uh, issues when seeking employment and attempting to achieve job success. So as I mentioned, we worked in partnership with the Social Determinants of Health Service unit at the Center of Addiction for Mental Health, which is CAMH, which is the largest mental health teaching hospital in Ontario. And is actually conveniently based just down the street from us. So it's a perfect partnership, and we developed the Lighthouse Project. In its pilot year, the Lighthouse Project provided 55 youth with pre-employment training, supported over 40 youth in finding full-time job placements, and full-time job placements by our government funding requirements was 30 hours a week for 12 weeks. We offered free mental wellness programming, such as yoga to all clients, mental health and maintaining mental wellness when starting employment, this period of transition, which I'll talk again upon later, is something that's extremely, extremely needed and needs to be almost pushed upon youth because they sort of don't see the benefits of it. So we offer free programs to them to make it super accessible, to make sure that they're maintaining their mental health during this period of transition. And it had one of the highest success rates of all programs at YES, with 78% of our clients in the Lighthouse program employed, returning to school, or enrolled in further training at exit. So at the end of that full-time job placement period. Now that was 2015 to 2016, and in 2016 we received a grant for a second year, and I'm very, very, very happy to report that just last week we received funding for a third year of programming. So it's something that I'm sure we're all used to, that waiting period of knowing if you'll get funding for a following year, but the Lighthouse just got renewed for a third year. But in its second year, we were able to provide over 60 youth with pre-employment training. We supported over 48 youth in finding full-time job placements, and that number actually may have gone up since I created this, as the program is just ending. So we do still have youth who are being employed, but still a very high success rate. And we have continued to offer free mental wellness programming. Yoga, I put on both slides, as it is the one that we have a yoga studio who provides pro bono classes in our office space for us. So it's the most consistent, but we also have had nutritionist guest speakers come in. We've had other types of physical fitness come in. We've had music therapy. We've had all sorts of things, really just whatever people are willing to volunteer their time to do. We will take whatever we can get as long as we see the benefits for our youth, for sure. Yes, and I will say that one of the reasons, and it will come up a few times, for the success of this program is when I say 55 or when I say 60 youth, we have 2 dedicated career counselors and job developers to those 60 or 55 youth. So it is a very high, or a very low, I guess, client to counselor ratio. And that's something that has definitely allowed for the individualization and the additional support that these youth need. So we do recognize that that's not always a luxury for a lot of employment centers to be able to offer this on this level, but it's more just to be aware of that we definitely do have that benefit, and it's definitely one of the reasons for its success. So I like to include quotes from Lighthouse Youth from my interviews, as I think it really just speaks to the programming better than I ever could. So during the time, Josephine, one of our Lighthouse Youth from our pilot year, and this entire project was based off the research and interviews and such from the first year of the program. So it was developed during the second year of the program, so feedback was always taken, but very much developed off the pilot year, the issues and the learnings from that, and the best practices as well. So Josephine says, during the times I was not working with YES and the Lighthouse Project helped me recognize that I was trying to find work and explain to other people how I was putting in that effort. Looking for work is very, very hard on your mental health, and you often feel people don't believe that you are doing enough. The Lighthouse Project always made me feel supported and encouraged me to keep looking for jobs. With Josephine's note, and it will come up again, this is definitely an important thing to remember as employment counselors that sometimes you are their only source of support. For some of these youth, they may have not talked about their mental health issues with their family and friends, and sometimes or other times they may have, and they aren't really, they're kind of facing that stigma, the reality that they're not receiving the support that they would like to get. And so oftentimes the youth who came to the Lighthouse, the counselors became the only source of support. So maintaining that positive attitude, that constant idea of hope that success is on its way is definitely something that's important to do for these youth and something to just keep in the back of your mind as you counsel youth with mental health issues. So some best practices that we learned from the first year of the Lighthouse Project. It's important to always have a person-centered approach when working with youth living with mental health issues. I think person-centered approaches are very common across all employment agencies, but especially when working with youth with mental health issues, it's important to be flexible, understanding, being open, create warm, inclusive spaces, and as I noted from Josephine's quote, always convey hope and optimism no matter the number of challenges or roadblocks a youth encounters. And that last statement ties really to the first three on being flexible, understanding, and open. These are youth who uh, will not show up for intakes or for meetings because of their mental health. And rather than asking where they are, it's important to look at the root of the problem and why weren't you able to come? What was affecting you, your ability to show up to my resume building session? Maybe it was the fact that it was at 9 a.m. and they get anxiety when they get on public transportation. And so they showed up to the public transport that morning and it was so crowded. And so they just had to turn around and go home. Well, then it's how do I be understanding and flexible? Well, maybe I can offer that session at a different time to accommodate the needs of that youth. So it's doing simple things like that and not saying, well, you need to show up at 9 a.m. It's helping them find success with the use of small accommodations, small and reasonable accommodations. Best practice is to ensure that program goals focus on what clients can do. So we all have those. Achieving job success ensures motivation and ensures continuation in a job placement. So it's really, as a employment counselor for these youth, it's really looking at what skill sets they have, whether that be past experience or whether that just be skills they've gained over their lifetime, and finding jobs that would fit those skills, because finding success in a role is almost the most important to help them as they start an employment journey, to help them stay motivated and get a sense of belief that they can be a strong employee and a benefit to a work environment. So this sometimes does mean that we very much need to almost encourage applications to certain types of jobs based on what you've identified they can do. It might always not be their dream job, and then also as employment counselors, just selling to them how the skills will gain through the jobs you're recommending will help them reach their end goals. So I often use the idea of becoming a teacher, or if someone comes in and says they want to be a teacher but they don't have the skills, or maybe that's a tough market to break into, showing them how something is as basic as being a coffee shop barista. That's a Starbucks term, but I was just working on a Starbucks project, so that's what's coming to mind. How that can teach them so many skills that will help them in the classroom, such as time management, such as customer service, such as thinking on your feet, problem solving. So just really kind of working with them to get them into a job that they will find ultimate success in. And then another best practice is to provide continued support throughout the pre-employment and job placement period. I know yes, it is program requirements that this happens in all programs, but I think when working with these youth and with the Lighthouse youth, this is to a whole new level. So this isn't quite the once a month check-ins. This is definitely a weekly, sometimes daily, depending on the youth needs, check-in on how they are doing. And it must be done throughout the pre-employment and even after the employment period. So we say that we offer a 3-month job placement period. We continue to do follow-ups with these youth 6 months and a year and within that. So they were technically in the program for an entire year. And we consistently are checking in with them, making sure accommodations are being met, making sure they're receiving the support they need. And then also these check-ins can be done, can and should be done with an employer. So making sure that the employer feels supported, that they feel the accommodations being asked for are successful, that the youth themselves is being successful, and what they're noticing might be some challenges or flags that they might need more support on. So this definitely, that's part of the reason that having this low client to counselor ratio was so helpful, is that the ability to do this was definitely something we could do on a daily basis if needed, just because we had a smaller caseload. But it's something that is extremely important to do, no matter how many youth you have. And then finally, best practice is to use the individualized placement and support model to achieve high levels of success. The IPS model comes out of the UK, I believe. That's where the institute is, and there's tons of research and lectures and so on it, which I highly, highly recommend you all look into. But as an overview, it does work to get people living with mental health issues into competitive employment as soon as they express interest. So capitalizing on that motivation that they have to find work and to be successful in work, as you never know how long that motivation is going to last, so really getting on top of it as soon as possible. It aims to find jobs that are consistent with preferences. So again, while we do strive to find jobs that align with what their ideal job goal is, just making sure that it does have some alignment, but that, again, I would say success is the most important, is with the Lighthouse, just finding them jobs they'll be successful in. It requires collaboration between employment counselors and clinical teams. If you have someone with a diagnosed mental illness, working with the clinical team as well. It encourages employment counselors to develop relationships with employers, as I just spoke to in the last slide. It provides time unlimited and individualized support, and includes benefits counseling to aid youth in supporting their self-esteem, self-confidence, relationship management, and to stop their limiting challenges and beliefs. So things that they definitely need extra support in, and that they need to be counseled on. So Amy, another one of our Lighthouse youth, she said, I liked the one-on-one mentoring sessions best because it provided me with dedicated, personalized help regarding my circumstances, background, and experiences. The one-on-one mentoring sessions helped me counterbalance my outlook on different situations and helped me learn more about my strengths and skill sets, as well as gain confidence in my abilities. So I think the way I've built this program definitely comes from a lot of feedback like Amy's, where group sessions are fantastic, but because they have such unique needs, and because some of them actually have are uncomfortable in large group situations, the ability to adapt programming to fit the needs of each individual youth and to meet with them one-on-one definitely is a huge benefit to them, and something that's very, very, very much appreciated, as we can see by Amy. So when you do look at the resource that's been developed, it has been developed to be run as group sessions, but also that they can be taken and done on an individual basis. And all facilitator notes will tell you how to accommodate the lesson if you're doing it one-on-one versus a group. So that was done because of feedback from youth and how much they valued that. So the next few slides are about learnings that we had in the Lighthouse in its first year, and I go through them a little bit quicker just because the learnings are exactly what the curriculum has been built to address. So I'll kind of talk about what the learnings are very quickly, and then I will apply them to the resource that has been developed to support these youth. So the first learning is youth living with mental health issues face many unique barriers when trying to access employment. And some of these include elevated levels of stress and new work challenges that make it difficult for youth to find balance and manage their mental health. So a lot of these youth will come off of periods of unemployment. That's often why they're accessing our services. And so because of that, just transitioning into a new job, especially as our program was a full-time job placement, was not part-time, is a huge challenge for them, and definitely something that needs to be counseled and facilitated and talked through with the youth. So before, and then that support needs to be continued as they transition into a job placement, as it can be challenging for them. Coping with side effects of medication, as well as the ebbs and flows of recovery. So mental health recovery is a journey. We like to say it is not something with an end goal destination. For every 1 step forward, there could be 2 steps back. For every 10 steps forward, there could be 3 steps back. For every 100 steps forward, there could be 1,000 steps back. So it's really something that's a journey, and they'll have good days and bad days. It's important for them to recognize that and to not lose motivation because of that, but then to also be able to move forward and know that they are slowly, and to really highlight the successes that they're having as like steps forward for them. And then balancing treatment needs with employment. So just that is as simple as needing to attend a counseling session every week to help them balance their mental health. Finding employers that are willing to accommodate that time off so frequently can definitely be a challenge. The learning that disclosure and accommodation are extremely challenging topics to cover, but are also one of the most needed and wanted pre-employment trainings for and by youth. I will talk a lot more about this one when I get to the workshops, but disclosure is something that, whether it was the employment counselors when I was interviewing them, whether it was CAMH talking about what the youth need, and whether it's the youth who are entering the job force, they all commented on disclosure. The want for more information, the uncertainty of how to address it. So a whole entire, actually 2 workshops were developed just for this. A learning was that client motivation and accountability was a constant challenge for employment counselors when working with youth living with mental health issues. So it is very, very, very much a reality that motivation and accountability are a challenge. This is something that we have not found the ultimate solution for. It is something that the Lighthouse still struggles with today, and that's why that IPS model, that capitalizing on the motivation, is so important. If they express motivation, that might not last. So it's really, or they might have a relapse, they might go into crisis, or for whatever reason. So it is something you definitely need to capitalize on when getting them into employment, but it's also definitely one of the biggest challenges. To get them to stay on top of it, to stay positive, is something you need to be aware of, and something you should be ready with, to sort of just be the Energizer bunny that keeps on going when they keep coming to you with challenge after missed appointment after missed appointment. So it's very, 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 very much a reality, and we've worked to try to address it, but it's far from perfect and just something to be aware of. And then the learning, and this goes back to Josephine's quote as well as Amy's, that the flexibility in programming, including the individualization of pre-employment sessions and job searching, was one of the most notable reasons for the Lighthouse's high level of success. So we had 2 youth kind of have quotes to that. There are many more from interviews that I did, and it really was that individualization and flexibility, that level of understanding that made our clients as successful as they were. So I've talked a lot about this resource. It's what we are all here to talk about today, empowering the employment sector to serve youth with mental health issues. So towards the end of the first Lighthouse year, as we were unsure about funding, the Counseling Foundation of Canada approached YES and saw a huge need to develop a resource that could then be disseminated to other employment agencies, other employment counselors, to the general public on how the Lighthouse Project worked as it was so successful, take the learnings and best practices from it, and develop resources to help support other agencies kind of implement the same type of program that we were able to, as this is a hugely growing region or a hugely growing issue, my apologies, for employment fields. All right, so we developed, YES, with the funding from the Counseling Foundation and in partnership with CAMH, developed Empowering the Employment Sector to Better Serve Youth with Mental Health Issues. So as I said, we kind of took learnings and we implemented a change. So we took the learnings, such as youth living with mental health issues face many unique barriers when trying to access employment, and we took what some of those unique barriers were, and we developed 2 different workshops that address some of these needs. So in Mental Health 101, Finding a Work-Life Balance, this workshop goes through, and this is actually the one that requires the most pre-work by all employment counselors, as it would be very area specific. But basically it walks through and sort of helps youth identify who in their community can support their mental health when they're going through this period of transition and as they stay in the workforce. So what community centers are there that offer free classes? What mental health services are there in my community, who are my family and friends I can talk to. So really sort of building that external support that they need to be successful and to help them balance their mental health needs and accommodations. And then Mental Health 102, Managing Mental Health in the Workplace, looks directly into the workplace. So kind of one of the main things they do in this workshop is they pick a job, and they can, if they have one, great, in mind. If they don't, then they can just sort of walk through one as a group or with a counselor, and they walk through a typical day at work. And they identify all of the things that may affect their mental health in a negative way, and then create action plans on how they would go about it. So a very basic and beginning of day task would be, maybe you have a youth who needs a physical schedule at the beginning of every day so that they can mentally prepare themselves for the day, what it's going to look like, and that helps them be more successful at work. So they're used to walking in every day and seeing a schedule and seeing exactly what their day is going to look like, but one day they show up at work and it's not there. Well, for a lot of youth, they would enter a crisis mode, they would panic, they would be unable to continue on their day of work. But instead, what we try to do is, having identified those before entering the workplace, we get them to walk through, okay, let's develop an action plan for what would I do. So I show up at work and there's no schedule, and that's something I definitely need, but there isn't one. Well, let me go find my manager. Okay, I can't find my manager. Let me go find a coworker. I can't find a coworker. All right, what's the thing I normally do most days when I show up to work? Let me start with that until I can find someone else. So really walking them through step by step the process to help them be productive and to be able to go upon their day when they encounter something that may set their mental health backwards and may be a reason they're unable to complete a successful day at work. So trying to help them stay motivated, to help them see success, to see that they are capable, independent people who can be successful in the workplace. So that's what Mental Health 102 is all about. We then took the learning that disclosure and accommodation are extremely challenging topics to cover, but are also some of the most wanted and needed. And I worked very, very closely with CAMH as the mental health experts on this topic to develop 2 different workshops. So choosing to disclose walks them through how to disclose. When do I disclose? How do I disclose? Who do I disclose to? What do I need to disclose? What does disclosure look like? So this talks about everything from, do I disclose on my cover letter? That is not something we recommend. Or is it something I need to disclose in my interview? Is it something I can wait until accommodation is needed? It is noted in disclosing that to receive appropriate accommodation, some level of disclosure is needed, but as you will see in the workshop itself, that a disclosure can be as simple as, I get anxiety in small spaces. When we have a meeting, can we keep a door open? That is a very simple and a very appropriate disclosure. You've explained you get anxiety in small spaces and you've offered a solution. That's a huge part. The manager can then say, of course, or they can say, then the manager can maybe say, it might be the case, well, this is a confidential meeting. We do need the door closed, but maybe we have a larger space that we can host this meeting in. So that's a perfect disclosure. A lot of youth, especially those that are referred to us from CAMH, are so used to working with counselors and clinical teams where they have to express every feeling they've ever had that over-disclosure becomes an issue. And then that scares off employers from employing them. So this workshop really works through, who do I need to disclose to? What do I need to disclose to receive the accommodation needed? When should I disclose? And I will just make note, and I definitely talk about this in the facilitator notes of this workshop, at the end of the day, you support whatever decision they have. So we have had clients who come in with something and they're very passionate about disclosing. They would just rather an employer know straight up front any challenges they may have, even if it's the smallest thing, but they're very passionate about an employer knowing, and they'd rather just not be employed by someone who isn't okay with it. And so at the end of the day, while that may not be needed, you may see that they would be very successful in a job. We do just support them in whatever decision they make. And then Breaking the Stigma is a workshop on starting the conversation. So they can include their own personal mental health journey, but as we try to break the stigma, as we try to change the topic of mental health, especially as I said, it's something that we are all working towards and dealing with every single day. Breaking the Stigma just sort of is a workshop that will help them learn the tools and skills and give them the confidence needed to just start the talk about mental health, whether that be with their employers, whether it be with their friends, with their family, if they haven't been comfortable to that point discussing it with their friends and family, whether that's turning them into an advocate in the workplace for mental health. It really helps them on all different levels, but is all about changing and shaping the conversation about mental health in their communities. So we then took the learning that client motivation and accountability was a constant challenge for employment counselors, and we created the job search. So this is something that a lot of programs at YES do informally, but no one's implemented it formally, and really it creates a job search action plan. So a lot of these youth, and I think a lot of youth in general, will comment on the goal of finding a job can often be very, very overwhelming and sort of sets back motivation. It's a little bit daunting. They can't get started on it. And so the job search kind of takes that big goal and breaks it down into much smaller goals, manageable tasks, and asks them to give completion due dates. Per se, those can obviously be altered if needed. And so it might be something such as, actually step 1, 2, and 3, if you're doing this as a series of workshops, lead into the next workshop. So you'd actually complete the first 3 together. But things on this action plan would be such as apply to 2 jobs a day. It will be something such as by end of week, I will finish my resume. So all steps needed to take to find that employment that they're searching for, but breaking it down to smaller, more manageable steps and helping them stay motivated by realizing if I complete one, I'm on to the next one, and I can sort of move forward that way. This was also developed as all CAMH clients, when they go into a recovery plan, kind of sign a contract with their counselor. So this is a creating that accountability, saying, I understand this is what I'm going to do, you understand this is what you're going to do, and we both agree to it. So in creating the action plan, not only are they breaking down this overwhelming task, but also sort of creating a contract with you and with themselves that this is what they are going to do to stay on top of their job search and to reach that end goal of finding employment. So it sort of also acts as a contract that you can sort of look back to and review and adjust if needed, obviously. And then finally, the flexibility in programming and individualization of pre-employment training was the most valuable. So we took workshops that most employment centers run, such as cover letters, resumes, and interviews, and we've tailored them to the unique needs of youth with mental health issues. So the reality is for cover letters, definitely a skill they need to have, especially one as they leave the employment agency. But at the end of the day, for these youth, as they're looking for their first job, the counselor or the job developer is definitely going to be the cover letter for these youth, really selling these youth. So it's something that doesn't need to be spent as much time. You need to give them the resources to be able to write one in the future, but in that moment, the reality is that you very much will be the cover letter. They really struggle with speaking to their strengths and their skills, so that's something to be aware of. With resumes, it is 99% of the time you use functional resumes, so you show them all the different, there's definitely more than 3 types of resumes, but because they often have had long periods of gaps in work employment or just no work experience whatsoever because of their mental health and managing their mental health, functional resumes are most highly recommended, and I said 99% of the time were used by our staff here when working with these youth. And then interviews, it goes through all the standard, common, tricky interview questions, but then also specifically looks at the questions surrounding disclosure. So it is illegal for an employer to directly ask about someone's mental health, but an employer themselves might not know that, or they may indirectly ask something that does ask about a youth's mental health. And so it kind of helps them walk through different ways they can go about answering those questions, and how to kind of navigate something they might not be comfortable disclosing in that moment in an interview. So those are the 6 workshops that have been developed to help work with youth with mental health issues in seeking and finding and maintaining employment. They are, as I said, have all been built to be run as group sessions or individually, and can be run standalone, or they can run as a series. So and the facilitator resources are all written out to help you run them whichever way you need. In the resource, there are also tons and tons of other resources out there. So CAMH was our mental health expert. Youth Employment Services was the employment experts, but we are far from the be-all and end-all of the resources out there, and there are so many more fantastic ones. So I compiled, I think, a 2-page list in this resource with little blurbs about what you'd find on each one, but compiling some resources I found extremely useful that are out there. And they cover everything from just more information about mental health for you yourselves as employment counselors. There are some resources that are to help support youth. So if they comment on, needing some help with managing their mental health, there's a lot of resources out there to do them with that. And then other things such as advocacy programs and shaping the conversation, such as the Let's Talk in Ontario there, and also it's a website, but we have it's an Ontario-based organization called jack.org, which is all about breaking the stigma for youth and really embracing your mental health as part of who you are and what makes you such a unique person and great person. So they have a Wear Your Label campaign with slogans such as "It's okay to not be okay" or "Anxiety Alliance." So it's really making your mental health part of being proud of who you are. So that is sort of the resource. It's very odd to do this blindly as I go through the slides and to not know what you're actually looking at or not seeing anybody. But if you have any questions, I'm ready to take them now. I also can be contacted at Youth Employment Services itself for afterwards. And I'm not sure if Greg has the resource, but I will send it to him after this. It will soon be up on our website along with a webinar. So if you want to share, it's almost identical to what I just went through with you all today, but maybe a little less hms and haws as I recorded it about 30 times to try to get it a little bit better. And yeah, you can always contact us and ask any questions you may have. So,
thank you, Marissa. Yeah. So I guess to address your first point, I think we did okay. I mean, the audience would be the best judge in terms of syncing the slides with your presentation, but fortunately I had the presenter mode up, so I was able to kind of see what was coming up next. And I think we maybe missed a couple of slides or we're a bit late on a couple, but I think overall it synced pretty well with your really descriptive and thorough presentation. So thank you, Marissa, for taking time out of your day to share with us the overview and of course the resource. We have a really quiet group today. We have had no questions come in so far. So
great.
Given there's still
I clearly did a fantastic job.
Well, I think that's certainly part of that means is that you're so thorough, but also we do still have 7 minutes or so left. So I have a question in the meantime while folks think about what questions they might have and type those in. I was really glad to hear you mention how the resource is going to be available, because that was my question. So
yes.
You said in the presentation there were the 6 workshops, is that right, that were developed
yes.
as part of the Lighthouse Project. So for folks sitting in on the call, when that does go up on the website, what format does that come in and how does that actually look in terms of being able to access it and use it?
Yeah, so what I can do after this, I don't know if you're able to send it out to everyone, but so there is a facilitator package. It's a PDF, and that has kind of a preamble about just mental health. It expands a little bit more on what I talked about at the beginning of the presentation. And then it has the PowerPoint slides. That's how the workshops have been developed, along with facilitator notes. So I really have made this so that you can just open it up and walk it. I even walk through it. So I even include everything such as what questions you should be asking, what is the purpose of each slide, so how to run the presentation, and then has an appendix with all the resources needed, the longer list of the resources that I offered. And so I can send that PDF to you, and then all 6 workshops are in PowerPoint form. So I can send all 6 of those for you as well, and you can send those out. And then when they go up on our website, it will be done in the exact same format, the PDF as well as the PowerPoint slides, and then a webinar that accompanies it, which is really just this webinar, but as I said, with a little bit few less hums and haws.
Yeah, that's excellent. I think that will be really useful. I can certainly send out the package in the follow-up email that will go out to folks not just sitting in on this call, but also those that were registered and missed it.
Yeah.
And we can also, I can also see about putting it on our center's website in the Knowledge Clearinghouse, because I think that would be a perfect place for us to be able to host it as well. So.
Yeah, ours should be up any day. So I'm waiting for the email. They have everything. So.
Okay, so In the meantime, we have had one question come in, so let's take a look at this one.
Okay.
The participant's asking, what kinds of relationships to the career counselors and job developers do they have with local employers? So it's actually
Yeah, so that's
a
something
question.
I think is common with all of our programs. So I would say with a lot of agencies is there's some employers they've developed relationships with, just having employed numerous youth there, and then we have other relationships such as we cold call, or we find job postings that sort of meet the interest of a youth, and then we'll go visit the employer and kind of talk to them about accommodation or whatever is needed. So it really is the whole spectrum. And then we obviously now have having this program now entering its third year, have these champion employers who are have been really happy with our clients and who now sort of are more open to employing youth with mental health issues as they've seen the successes. They understand how little accommodation can cost them and how little accommodation can be. So it really does vary. So they have those like champion ones that they've had long relationships with who we keep sending youth to and we keep employing that way. And then we also very much do have ones we don't really have a relationship with at all when we start. And we have to cold call them and talk a little bit about our program, about our youth. Always remembering disclosure is top of mind. So if the youth doesn't want to be disclosed, then we just have to work with that. But you can sort of navigate that as need be.
Excellent. And I thank you for reminding us of the upcoming third year of programming. So I just wanted to congratulate you on that. That's very exciting news for you. And
yeah, we're celebrating
yeah, no
here for
doubt.
sure.
Okay. And second part of this question was asking about if there are any kinds of employer incentives, whether that's a wage subsidy or anything else, or if those incentives come strictly in the support of having access to job developers and to staff, programming staff in the Lighthouse Project.
Yeah, so we definitely, through the government funding, we do get wage subsidy. That's why we do have the 30 hours a week for 12-week requirement. But I will say that we don't always use it. So obviously, if we don't use all of our if a client doesn't need wage subsidy to incentivize an employer to buy them, then we try not to use it just so we can service more youth. So again, this really, depends. It also is if we have a really good relationship with them, maybe they'll take less of a wage subsidy because they're so used to working with us, whereas maybe a new one to kind of show them that working with youth, employing a youth with mental health issues isn't as much of a challenge as it seems, we'll use that wage subsidy to incentivize them to kind of take that first shot. So we do, I believe it's 70% of minimum wage is what our wage subsidy is for that job placement period. But we try to not use it whenever possible so we can service more clients.
Excellent. Well, so using it as a tool on a case-by-case basis then.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And it also like how much accommodation might be needed might be a reason that we would use it for a youth. But if we have a youth who, maybe just needs a very, very minor accommodation or a bit of flexibility, and then, or if we have a really great employer, then we try not to use it so we can service a few more clients.
Okay. Well, that brings us to the top of the hour. So, Marissa, thank you so much for your presentation today, and thank you also to everyone out there for attending. Today's session was recorded, and we will post the video of the presentation on our website, and we'll send you all the link in an email along with the materials that Marissa has mentioned.
Yes, I will have those resources out tomorrow, just so that people aren't expecting them today.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay.
As I'm currently at home and don't have access to my work computer.
No problem at all. We normally send out the follow-up emails with the recording and the slides about a week after. So
okay. You will definitely have them by then.
Okay. So for folks out there, we welcome your input and feedback. And when you leave the webinar, you will be asked to complete a short survey. We'd appreciate it if you took a minute or two to share your thoughts, as it will help us immensely in planning future events. We would also appreciate any suggestions you have for future webinar topics. The Center's next webinar is on integrating motivational interviewing within employment services for income assistance recipients. For more information on the date and content of this webinar, keep an eye on the Center's website. And that ends our event today. On behalf of Mauricia and my colleagues here at the Center, thanks for participating in today's discussion and have a great afternoon.